as Julie said, the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning is this the name of this sort of entity. And there's nothing new about it. It's been around for a long time, but it's often new for faculty who don't have a background in education, people who are professors of Italian, professors of nursing, professors in their own discipline areas may not have thought about SoTL. And I know some of you here are teacher educators. You are, let's say Rhonda's here, she just presented at the conference. You might be in education, but you don't think of your work as SoTL per se. So we can also talk about some of those considerations. So I like this definition. I think it's encompassing of what SoTL is. Scholarship of Teaching and Learning invites staff, faculty, etc., to view teaching as serious intellectual work, ask good questions about our students' learning, seek evidence in our classrooms that can be used to improve practice, and make our work public so that others can use it, critique it, build on it, and contribute to the wider teaching commons. One of the things that I usually mention when I talk about SoTL is, do you consume SoTL? So before you're even thinking about publishing it, have you accessed SoTL for your own purposes? So for example, you're about to do a new course, an English 101 composition course, an advanced German course. Do you go to the literature and see what are faculty doing out there right now regarding this particular area? A lot of times I think we think about producing SoTL without having consumed it. So that's an important thing to kind of just check in with yourself about. SoTL, I kind of use this to help me organize my thinking around SoTL. And it's not a strict kind of, there's not strict boundaries here, but I find this a bit helpful. So there are people who do education research. There's also people who are researching in their discipline areas. And we also have the teaching that we do. And they start to intersect. So for example, if I am interested in, you know, how my students are learning, but I don't necessarily want to publish about it, but I want to be informed. I want to be up to date on the learning sciences, and I want to look at what other people have done. That might be more in the realm of scholarly teaching. That's something I know that Lisa Marie Anderson and I've talked about before, is this idea of teaching as a scholarly activity, because as you teach, you are not teaching in a vacuum, you are using, hopefully, research-based principles. There's also people who are working in their discipline areas, for example, like Steve Bauman, he's training nurses. Well, there's specific pedagogy or instructional practices that are used in the training of nurses that you wouldn't find in, let's say, the Italian classroom. So, and vice versa. So sometimes you're interested in that kind of teaching. What specifically makes someone an expert in delivering nursing education or in Italian language? And that's that signature pedagogy. And again, that's in the realm of the teaching practice, the informed scholarly teaching practice. Then we have perhaps people doing research on their disciplinary teaching. So if I am that professor of nursing, I might look to other nursing journals. How do other nursing faculty deliver particular courses that are common to us across our universities? And that's sometimes called disciplinary-based educational research, or DBER. CUNY actually has a DBER journal in art history that's published through our academic commons. So you could look at that even if you're not an art historian, just to get an idea of when you cluster disciplinary experts together and they're doing educational research, what does that look like? And then, of course, we have this idea of using education research to inform teaching, and that might become something that you would publish in a, I call them like generic, but they're just inclusive journals. They might have someone who is a librarian, someone who is a, someone who works in urban studies, a historian, but they've all, let's say, used technology in some kind of innovative way. So in that case, we kind of cross discipline boundaries. And that's what's kind of neat about a lot of the assert work, because we do wind up getting great teaching ideas and insights from people across those disciplinary boundaries. The way we can kind of also think about SoTL as opposed to just being great teachers and being informed practitioners is that our teaching might be private. It's more informal. It's something we're reflecting on and we're bringing to week after week. We're in a writing center. We, inform ourselves about great practices in training our tutors in our writing center, and we do that in our own space. But when we start to be more systematic about it, we start to collect some kind of evidence or do something in a way that it can then be shared publicly, then we're starting to move into the SoTL domain, the scholarship of teaching and learning. So what's interesting or important or relevant about the training of writing tutors in a highly urban, hyper-diverse setting like Hunter College that could inform similar institutions in other places. And then it becomes something that, again, is published. Okay. So one of the other ways we can kind of think about it is developing courses for ourselves based on, effective practices that we're reading about. Publishing curriculum is public, but it's not something that's a systematic research approach. And then even like Joel talks about a lot of these assessment techniques, which are based on what we know from educational research. We might be using them systematically, but we might not be publishing about them or sharing them publicly. And that's where it goes over into the SoTL domain. So when we talk about empirical research, that can be off-putting for people who are maybe humanities people who've never studied social science approaches. And on the other hand, it can also seem very different for people who are bench scientists, who are chemists, et cetera. This is also a different kind of research. So generally people in education, schools of education, or people who are in libraries tend to be more familiar with social science approaches. And so often you can partner with someone when you're looking to publish a study. So empirical it doesn't mean quantitative. It can be completely qualitative. It just means that you're collecting fresh data to answer your question. It's not document-based. However, there can be SoTL work that is not, that is document-based, but we can talk about that. Okay. When we are designing our SoTL project, maybe you're in the midst of one, or maybe you're noticing some interesting things that are happening now with the students that you're working with, or it could be faculty that you work with. So let's say you're a staff person like Kenny or Joel, and your students are actually faculty. Then you're looking at, how are they best learning? And you're thinking about questions and you're designing activities, of course, to facilitate their learning. You're always thinking about, how do I make that learning more visible? How can it become more than self-report? Because SoTL is plagued by self-report. So you want to move beyond, I liked it, I enjoyed it, I learned a lot, as your data. You want to add some element where you can really better see that this learning is getting applied, so that you can systematically collect it and tag it, code it, explore it. And we're going to want to take that step of peer review to bring it to a journal, whether that is a small boutique kind of journal that's very practitioner based, or something that is a little higher tier, a little more competitive in terms of getting it published. And the idea is that the whole process here not only improves your understanding of what you're doing, your impact on your clients' learning, whoever that may be, but it also benefits higher education more broadly. If you've discovered a really effective way to work with those writing tutors, then you want to share that and you want to have evidence for your claims. And I think I've said that. Okay, so the process is like any kind of inquiry cycle. The hardest part sometimes is defining your question, and this is not something that just happens, of course, in a linear way. You wind up going back and changing your question a lot as you see, of course, what you're getting. But it's something that has interest for you, something that you're noticing. We'll talk about questions in a moment. And you're going to then try to link some sort of evidence to the questions that you're asking, make some kind of plan, try to pilot, for example, if you have a survey or you have something that you're coding, then collect the rest of that data. And then you're disseminating it, hopefully, again, through some scholarly outlet, but you're also applying it. Of course, it's a continuous cycle of improvement. So in terms of the type of questions you might ask for a SoTL project, these are usually kind of the classic, like sort of the archetypal questions for SoTL work. The first one is, is this working? What's working? Is this particular approach, like let's say Julie is having students use podcasting as a way to improve their listening skills in Italian class, is this working? So you automatically can see right there that we're going to have, well, how is she going to know if it's working or not? Is she going to have pre and post? Is she going to have last semester students versus this semester? What listening assessment is she using? We can start to sort of put it into place as a project. What is type of SoTL are not so much describing or measuring a particular intervention, but just better understanding learning processes. So let's just use this example again. It's probably really bad one, Julie, so you can tell me later, because maybe there's not a lot of Dante podcasts out there. I don't know, maybe there are. But so let's say it's not so much that she assumes that like introducing a podcast is going to work or be better, but she wants to understand how her students are approaching using this material. What do they bring to it? How do they negotiate it? What do they work with? What are the resources they use? She wants to understand more about how the students are learning using, let's say, her podcast assignment. Visions of the possible and theory building are much less frequently done. And they tend to be people who have already published a lot in SoTL and are now building frameworks. And these could be more theoretical papers or conceptual papers about, let's say, a new model. Let's say Steve has done a ton of reflective writing with nursing students and looking at all the ways that they cope with trauma and they support, are secondarily affected by trauma. And then he has done so much work in this area that he envisions a way of approaching nursing students with this trauma-informed pedagogy. Like I'm completely making this stuff up, but so generally the real bulk of SoTL publication is going to be in the top one, what works, with some in the second category.